Hello and welcome. My name is Mollie Carmichael with Zonda's Inspirational Leadership series, and you are here with the industry's best. Today, we are joined with the one and only Howard Englander. He's the owner and principal of the Englander Company today. And I want to share just a little bit about Howard before we begin. Howard started out as a teacher, no surprise to me. And after relocating, he fell into real estate consulting just by chance and to our great fortune, of course. He later formed his own research company and is known today as one of the best product leaders throughout the country. He does remain a great teacher today. He's a great writer, a researcher. He's truly an artist, a photographer, and again, one of the nation's best product leaders, known by so many, and so many follow what he does because he is so good at what he does. Today, Howard works exclusively with Shea Homes, leading their product, and I don't blame him. He's without a doubt the very definition of what I believe is a great inspirational leadership. He's not only a great friend to me, but he's certainly been a mentor over the years. And when I think about Howard's leadership, there are so many qualities to talk about that I really admire. But what I admire most about Howard is not only his talent and his brilliance, but he's almost graceful in his approach and how he works with people. And leadership does require so much more than just being brilliant and having exceptional talent, of which Howard has both of. But the number one quality to a great leader is the ability to collaborate, motivate, and really move those towards a better path together. And he's never wanting to do anything twice. He's always looking to move and change product with the generations, with what's going on today, and where we're going in the future. I'm going to stop going on about Howard so you can hear from Howard himself. I want you to hear about really his own thoughts about inspirational leadership, his career, and what led him to where he is today. So it's my pleasure for sure to welcome Howard Englander. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mollie Carmichael, and I'm here with Howard Englander. He's the president and owner of the Englander Company. And thrilled to have you here, Howard.
Thank you, Mollie. Good to be here.
I always love spending time with you. So let's dive into some questions. First of all, if you were to share with us what you do for a living, I'd love to hear your version of that.
I work exclusively for Shea Homes. And even when you say the owner and principal of the Englander Company, that is almost a non-existent entity today. I feel I work and employed by Shea Homes, which is a thrilling last chapter to my professional career. It's been about 25 years now that I've worked exclusively for Shea Homes.
That's pretty neat. Well, I would tell you, for those of you listening today, I think I've known of Howard the majority of my career, an incredible product legend, just somebody, when you're thinking about great ideas and inspiration and really an artful way of looking at home design, I think of you. And so with that, just given sort of that foundation, let's go back, way back when, a very young Howard, and I always throw out the age of 8 or 9 or whatever. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I always imagined myself in the educational, humanistic realm.
I see that for you.
And I taught school for 6 years. 3 years here in El Segundo, California, 5th graders.
What did you teach?
I taught 5th graders, period.
Fifth grade, their whole, all education.
You got math, you got English, you got geography, you got history.
Oh, I would have loved to have been in that class. That would have been fun.
Yeah, it was a joyous time. And then I expanded geographically my teaching career and moved to Oregon, a small town called Sheridan. And I taught middle school English there, which is probably where I was originally destined as a teacher, because I majored in English and I love literature. And
you're a beautiful writer.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So anyway, I was a teacher, and for a variety of reasons, I moved back to Southern California, had to seek out a new career, only because at that time there was a really a squeeze on the teaching profession. And actually, I was visiting the unemployment agency with great trepidation and apprehension. And thank goodness, before I got to the desk to do all the paper filling, I saw a little sign that said, "Writer needed, Walker and Lee."
No way.
And I had no idea what Walker and Lee was. It turned out that Walker and Lee was the largest residential broker for new homes in America. I had an interview with a lovely woman named Ione Lansfield at that point, the position was more writing feasibility studies.
Sure.
And her question was, "Have you ever done any professional writing?" I said, "No."
Little did she know what she was getting.
Well, and they said, "Have you ever had any experience in real estate?" And I said, "No." And
little did she know what she was getting.
I was terribly unqualified. And she said, "Well, what writing have you done?" And I said, "Well, I've done some short stories. I have some poetry." And strangely, these words came out of her mouth: "Send me 3 of your poems." And I left thinking that opportunity had passed me by. And I did send her 3 poems. And I got a call about 2 weeks later. And that call was prefaced with the comment, "This might be one of the dumbest employment decisions I have ever made in my life, but I like your poetry." That is how I got into real estate.
Wow.
So I spent 5 years at Walker and Lee. After 2 years, I was heading up their research department.
That was a heck of a gut decision.
Yes. So anyway, I did not seek out real estate. I fell into it.
Real estate sought out you. No, that's a real magic moment for sure. Tell me this. Now, I know you have some history with photography. And also you lived in LA, and there was definitely a passion and a desire for art. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I always loved photography. And in the mid-1980s, I sought out an opportunity. It was a juried kind of thing to study for a couple weeks with a great documentary photographer, Mary Ellen Mark.
Wow.
And the class was in Maine, and I was juried into that class. And that really sort of catapulted or intensified my love of photography, which was mostly documentary work. And in fact, subsequent to my time with Mary Ellen Mark, I went back to that school several times. Ultimately, you're aware, I found a home in Maine.
Yes,
which was also a historical highlight in my life because it brought my American experience into a different cultural zone.
For sure.
And so
we both have a love for Maine.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
That's right. You have spent time in Portland.
Yes. And Waterville.
Oh, and Waterville, where the university is.
Yes.
And they have a great art museum on that campus.
And the people are just so nice and genuine. And it's just a neat place to visit.
So for years, I did a lot of photography, and given my Neanderthal technological skills, digital photography did not turn me on. It turned me off.
Not a shocker.
And the magic of film, and not the instant gratification. It was not who I was as a photographer. And the only time I actually picked up a digital camera was when I went to Cuba. It was very worthwhile because it was such a colorful piece of this earth. And the Cuban people are just marvelous. So, but I talk about getting back to it, and I have a couple of very good digital photographer friends that say one day we're going to take you by the collar and work you over, and you'll get back to it.
Well, the part I love about digital photography is there's this thing called a delete button. And when you have that one really bad picture that you're like, oh, so I do love that. So let's go back to, so you joined Walker and Lee. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, it was more, that was the world of more of my exclusively quantitative experience in real estate. It was mostly feasibility work, judging the viability of various properties and what product type to put on it. And it was only towards the end of that I began to say, hey, that in and of itself is not a complete experience.
Right.
That the product, the qualitative side of the proposition also had to be melded into the professional experience, and began to emphasize product and began to draw. And and that was a 5-year episode. And after 5 years at Walker & Lee, I needed something beyond the auspices of a purely brokerage firm.
Right.
Okay, I wanted to move beyond that into more of a consulting firm, and hence the company Residential Concepts was initiated, which for a while was a very large company, and I sold that company after about 4 years, and then more exclusively dealt one-on-one with builders.
Or different clients. So on the product side, as you sort of went into more of the quantitative, and I like the approach of sort of looking at it more qualitative and really the more well-rounded approach, is that something that just naturally came to you? Was it just something you had a passion for, or how did you fall into that?
I like to think it initiates with the creative side.
Sure.
Right brain side. And my comfort zone is more in the creative realm.
Right.
And watching something materialize. And hence, I felt, although, I feel I somewhat mastered the quantitative side. Right. I mean, I can do the feasibility, but the gratification and the joyous moment was born out of the creative adventure of saying, hey, here's a new product idea, here's a new concept. How's this for a different kind of site plan? To me, that's where the excitement resided in the business.
Oh, for me too.
Yes, I'm sure.
I totally am.
I'm sure.
So as you started to kind of move to more of that qualitative, now you're coming from a very quantitative background. So from that perspective, you can do the 2 + 2 is 4. Everybody understands it. I find in my own career, it's very easy for me to get a point across as long as I can say, and by the way, you're going to make more money doing X, Y, and Z. But in the product side of things, it becomes, you certainly can qualify that and quantify, but there are some times where it's like, you just know it. It's an intuitive, very artful thing. How do you get that across? And how did you sort of approach doing things different?
Well, I think one thing that was almost imperative is you can only verbalize a concept so far.
Right.
And ultimately, you have to try to put it on paper. And there wasn't that natural pathway where you could go to an architect and say, hey, I have a different idea for a home. So my inclination and impulse was to say, let me try to draw it myself. And I found if I could go into a meeting with a new idea and have some semblance of a sketch.
So they can see what you were talking about.
They can see what I'm talking about. And often, to me, the excitement is, when we look at product, we can go to builder A, B, and C and say, here's their best plans and here's what we should do. Or you can go to builder A, B, and C and say, here's what they're not doing.
Exactly.
Here is what they're not doing that could be successful. And to do that, you also have to believe to a certain extent that if 75% of the people don't like something and only 25% of the people do, but nobody else is doing it, you're likely to sell a lot of houses.
Right.
And I think of a variety of concepts that were initiated. I don't know whether it was the first or not the first, but when a prospect walks into a home and says, wow, that offers me a different lifestyle opportunity, you're more likely to capture the enthusiasm of that household and potentially make a sale.
But I think even just coming into something fresh and different, there's just something about that experience when you walk into something, right? That just feels different, especially if it enhances how you live, right? So talk about, so there are these famous kind of product presentations. You got into taking a lot of pictures and really doing sort of these product shows, if you will. I can remember with PCBC one time just saying like, wow, wouldn't it be neat to have Howard kind of show some of the products you've seen. How did that all evolve? Tell me about that, because I know there's two phases of that, right?
Well, that's interesting, Molly, because part of it was born out of my love of photography.
Interesting.
Okay, so the original design audit was a...
and that's what it was called, a design audit?
It was called the design audit. And it would be an annual thing where I would select 35 projects which had a positive impact on me, or they were learning lessons. They taught me something.
I love that.
And during the early years, I would photograph them all myself. Okay, and I would I would go to builders with 2 screens. I was like a traveling screen. I had 2 screens. I had a big duffel bag with about 10 trays of slides.
The reels of slides,
right? The reels of slides.
I do remember that.
And actually it was very successful. I'd go into builders' offices and say, we're going to have a fun time. We're going to look at 30 projects. Some of them I think are going to be fantastic. And you might say, God, that stuff is terrible. And so let's talk about it. And those were great sessions. And eventually, I got a little bit weary of the photography aspect of the journey, and hence John Baer, a real architectural photographer that went to Brooks.
Such a good eye.
Yes. And so John became partner in the adventure. He would do all the photography. I would pick the projects. I would script them for him, what I wanted, because when you walk into a new community, your natural instinct is storytelling. So you have to, as you're walking through the various homes and identifying the architectural achievements, you're telling a story. So it was John and I had a natural synergism of here's what I want shot, here's, and John. So it was a very gratifying time, and finally I burned out on it. It was.
So how many years did you do that for?
Probably 7 or 8 years.
So that would be really fun. So as part of the builder experience, did they tell you what they liked, why they liked it?
Right.
And so you're collecting information while doing that, right?
Right. Yeah, it was a very hearty conversation around that table.
So now here's a question. Did you ever sit down with a builder and say, now this is number 20, hated it. And let's talk through where it could have gone better. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, I think certain discussions came forward because life is all about eye of the beholder.
For sure.
Okay, hence what I would say, boy, isn't that window treatment unbelievable? You know, the builder in the room might say, hey, too much clear, too expensive. Hey, you don't need to spend that extra $500 on that clear story windows. So to me,
but that's the best part because that's actually where I personally have learned.
yeah, right. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Love that.
You know, the learning experience of the original design audit worked. It was a mutual. It worked both ways. I mean, I walked out of there wiser. I hope the builder client who just paid for the service, I hope they learned something. So it was, I think, a very positive exchange.
But, you know, it's really interesting in my own career. I've learned so much from having like the purchasing guy next to me or the construction person with me or whoever those different people are. They're like, you know, it's $120 a shutter. And, you know, to be able to integrate that into the design and say, gosh, you know, where do I put it? Right.
Yeah, because a lot of my recommendations still today, I have to be reined in. you know, because
Shocker.
you know, and it's even more acute today, given the operational challenges that we're facing at this moment in time.
Oh, prices are just insane.
Right. So
Yeah,
you know,
Well, let's talk a little bit about that from a product perspective. So you did those presentations, you went to different builders, and then comes Design Lens. How does Design Lens get born?
well,
Definitely a favorite of mine. Too,
first of all, you have to start with 2 or 3 beers. Okay. And
that'll be later, Howard.
Those 2 or 3 beers were shared with my son Josh and the architect Michael Woodley.
Love both of them.
At a bar prior to a hockey game that Michael Woodley invited me to. And we're sitting there, and Mike says, you know, everybody misses the design audit. You got to find some way to can you computerize it? Can you do it? People loved it. I said, Mike, you're talking to the wrong human being. It's done. We went to the hockey game, and about 3 or 4 days later, my son Josh knocked on my skull and said, Dad, there was an idea there that you failed to recognize. Can I explore it? And so that is how Design Lens was born, and we integrated my daughter Jennifer into the process. She somehow contacted Steve Chen, who was the creator of YouTube.
Right.
And he was the original programmer.
How did she get a hold of him?
I don't...
Just fell across it?
I don't recall. But he created the original format for Design Lens, so Jenny handled the technological side of the enterprise. Josh handled the marketing side of the enterprise, and I handled the content aspect.
Perfect.
And John Bear handled the photography.
So it was like getting the whole gang together with some additional, you know, digital geniuses.
Right. And then one of the highlights of Design Lens was post the recession, where Design Lens was eliminated because of the crisis in the housing industry. One, Mollie Carmichael.
I know.
Re-championed it.
Definitely a favorite of mine.
Brought it to John Burns, and it brought it to life for the second chapter. So thank you. Thank you.
No, it was definitely something I used through my whole career. And I would tell you, for me, it was just a great catalog of density, and still is today, by the way. It's just such a great resource to be able to kind of not only stay up on trends, but also just to be able to have sort of that, today what I do is just like pockets, right? So such a cool idea. So now let's move forward. So going back, I want to go, we're going to go backwards and then we're going to go forwards. So let's look back at your Walker and Lee days. You move out of Walker and Lee, you go and you start your own company. And then what do you do after that?
It was where most of my time after I sold Residential Concepts, and I don't, Bob Clauser.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, great guy.
Bob took it over. He's a fantastic consultant, analyst.
Yes.
Superb. Ultimately.
Another good eye.
Right. Ultimately became a VP for Pardee, and Residential Concepts went away. And then as that faded, I'm dealing with multiple builders. I'm still doing feasibility, but I'm still doing product. And Carol Lind, analyst, Leanne, my wife,
yes,
an analyst.
Now you met your wife at Walker and Lee, right?
I did.
Yes.
Yes. The Englander company sort of became Residential Concepts again, but
just evolved,
but not on as big a scale as Residential Concepts. I mean, Residential Concepts once had like 20 employees, which in today's world, in the Zonda world or the John Burns world,
that's a lot of employees.
Not much.
More employees I would want in.
But in those days, it was a pretty big company.
Yes.
But I wanted to keep things small and be involved in all aspects. So the Englander company, once again, did feasibility and product studies.
Now that's an interesting question. So looking back, you were part of Walker and Lee, which became a very big company, as I understand it, right? And then, of course, you had your company that was big, and then you chose to really go sort of more small, niche kind of. Why?
Because I'm not an administrator. Okay.
Me neither, by the way.
I am not an accountant. I am not a lawyer. I am not a manager. That's questionable. But I wanted involvement, and I felt that I did not have that opportunity in a large company, and I could be more selective as to my clientele, which was also, I wanted guys and companies, men and women that loved what I loved, which was product creation. Let's be adventuresome. Let's pass through a new threshold of opportunity. And so, it's like anything else. I'm sure maybe with you too, the interface with some companies provides for much greater professional gratification than others. And not to say those that I wasn't inclined to work with aren't great companies. They're just different.
Right. It's painful for me when I see an opportunity and I'm like, no, like you will I promise you'll get paid more. And they're like, no, that's tough. So how did you let's fast forward, you're working now with Shea Homes. How did that relationship or marriage evolve?
Well, it started in 1978 when Roy Humphreys called me and said, at that time, the preeminent research firm in this area was Market Profiles, Bill Mitchell.
Yes.
Great man,
Boyd, yep.
Great professional. And Bill had decided to become a builder and wasn't doing research anymore. Roy had somehow caught my name in some situation, and I started doing consulting for Shea in 1978. And
were you working with Bill before? With Bill Mitchell before?
No, I never knew him, but never worked with him.
Oh, loved him.
Yeah, great man.
Great man.
And so my initial involvement with Shea traces back 45 years.
Wow, 19.
45 years. But for, what would I say, 20 years or 15 to 20 years, I don't know the numbers exactly, I still had a lot of other clients, be it, Lennar, Lion, Catellus. But there was always that special love and feeling at home with Shea.
There is something really awesome about the Shea family and the team that I can't even explain it.
Well, the Shea,
there really is.
The benevolence and philanthropic qualities.
Good words.
Of the Shea family are extraordinary.
I agree.
And their outreach in terms of helping others, doing the right thing, is very, very noble. There was a point in time, be it 24, 25 years ago, where the stress level once again became too great in terms of Shea and this other builder looking at the same property.
Sure.
And my deal was, hey, I want you to know that I'm doing it for both of you. I'm giving you the same numbers, but it always felt to me uncomfortable.
I know what you mean.
Very uncomfortable. And at that point of time, you go through chapters of your professional career and you say, once again, and that's what my career has been, chapters, I said, what would it feel like to work with the one builder from whom I draw the most satisfaction and raw happiness? And that was Shea Homes. And there, and irrespective of a little bit of the financial penalty I might have suffered, to me, the gift was big. And so they were excited, I was excited, and that's how it's been for the last almost 25 years.
Oh, they had to be clicking their heels. So now, mind you, it's one company, but how many divisions at the time, and how many divisions today? It's no small task.
When I started in 1978, there was only Southern California and the beginnings of Northern California.
Really?
Right.
Okay, interesting.
Then San Diego came, and a guy, I don't know if you ever met Tom Noon.
Oh, yes, of course.
Tom Noon
of course.
Started San Diego.
Nice.
And then actually Arizona came about because I had a very close relationship with Cannell Homes, who was one of the three biggest builders in Arizona, and brought the Shea family and the Cannell family together.
Wow.
And that's how Shea initiated Arizona. Then it initiated Adult with your friend Rick Andreen.
Yes.
Who, is a great visionary as far as in the design realm. And then we...
So Rick started up Trilogy. I don't think I realized he was the initiator and the starter of that, but I do remember the transition. And
Rick started Trilogy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Rick started adult housing for Shea Homes.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
And he was there for quite some time.
Right.
Looking back at everything you've been involved in, do you have a favorite home or a favorite neighborhood?
Boy, that is a tough one, Molly.
And you could, it's like asking
I
somebody
would
to
say,
take their favorite
you know
child.
what it is? No, actually, I think I can. It's right here up the street, Ocean Ranch.
Really?
And Ocean Ranch,
I know the community for sure.
I mean, the entry was the waterfall on both sides. And we had a lot of that was Burkus. Who did we use there? Burkus, and Jamie Stark. And one of the things I loved best was, I don't know if you ever saw the prototype Riviera, which is the fourplex, all flats. And you can see it as you drive now down the Gale Road, how beautiful it is. Ocean Ranch.
I'm gonna have to look at it.
Ocean Ranch does rank as one of them. And
Nice.
also up in Northern California, Silver Creek.
Silver Creek. Now, what did you like about Silver Creek?
Silver Creek, it was just the mix of product. We repeated the Riviera project up in Silver Creek, and just how to preserve landform, not mutilate landform. Respect the topography and the undulation, and avoid a mass grading.
Let it be part.
Yeah. So, and it was a golf course community, and it was just, I don't know if you ever, I drove through it a couple of years ago, and it's still just a great place. South San Jose.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to run home and do my homework and look both of those up. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just about you. So if you were not working, what would you be doing?
I hope I would be teaching. I hope the circle would take form, and
my
I
sense
could
is
teach.
you're a natural teacher.
And the other thing I would be doing is writing. I'd be teaching and writing.
What about your favorite place to visit?
My wife and I have been to Paris probably 20 plus times in our long marriage. And still to this day, I love that city. And what I love most about it is just a table at a sidewalk cafe and watching the world go by and just sitting there. But I just, to this day, and what I really love about it is that as a young man, prior to any marriage or involvement, I was there once for 7 straight weeks. And still today, the heart of that city remains the same as to what it was 60 years ago. The car styles by James, the fashion a little, but the core, the architectural core of the city remains intact. It is that old classical world. And
there's something about that timeless that is magical.
Timeless is the right word.
Right. So I'm going to ask you to give me a word for a couple of, what word comes to mind when I say a certain subject? So what word comes to mind when I say people?
Caring.
What about design?
Uniqueness.
Affordability.
Critical. Important.
Authentic.
Lasting.
I love that. That's perfect. That's a great word for authentic. I have 2 more questions for you, but before we go to that, tell us a little bit about your family. You have a couple of new additions to your family, right?
I have 4 kids. My older daughter lives in Aptos near Santa Cruz up north. Was a lovely man. We hold very dear.
And that's Jenny, right?
That's Jenny. And then my son Josh has made Europe his home. He spent 3 years in Scotland and the last 5 years, going on 6 now, in Germany. He has a great job at an advertising agency in Berlin. And it's always a strange story because you talk about circles, because my family escaped Germany in 1938.
Really?
So here my son is living in the same city where my father lived prior to his escape from Nazi Germany in 1938. So it's always interesting.
And he's a bit of a creative genius too, as I recall.
He's a great writer, superb writer, and also has that real creative edge.
And you have a couple of grandchildren with?
I have 2 grandchildren.
I've seen pictures. They're
I
adorable.
have a 25-year-old who lives in Copenhagen and who came to visit us this last holiday. It was her lovely Latvian boyfriend.
Nice.
And now they're in the process, given his job, which I don't quite understand because it's sort of an astrophysicist, which is beyond my realm of understanding. They're moving to Switzerland.
Wow, quite the traveling family. Well, that gives you good reason to get out there.
And then my younger daughter is a teacher, administrator in LA schools, and lives up in Altadena with her husband and my rambunctious and beautiful 4-year-old granddaughter.
Nice.
And then my younger son, Brett, fortunately, lives right in Laguna where we can visit, and with his wife, Taylor, and his newborn 4-month-old son, Finn, who I got to see yesterday.
Isn't that the best? So he's smiling now and all that stuff. Oh, that's so cute. That is the best. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with mentors in your career. Who were the mentors in your career? And then my final question will be outside of your career. Who are your outside inspirational people? But inside your career, who were your top mentors?
I would think I would have to put right up there William Kennicott,
Okay.
who used to run the McCarthy Company and was one of those guys that said, don't come back unless you've got something really, really different. and I can tell you a great story.
That's a good one.
That he sent me back to Virginia to do a study. He was headquartered here in Orange County. In fact, Bill McFarland used to work for Bill Kennicott at McCarthy, who
of course,
you know from Irvine days.
Of course.
And I go back there, and the stuff back east, it's 5'4" in the door.
Right.
It's very compartmented. It came back and said,
Salt box.
Yeah, I can't. All these houses are so compartmented. Nobody's opening up these houses where there's, internal vistas and expansive views inside the house. And his team back there, great bunch of people, made the recommendation, said, hey, we can't do that. I mean, people will not receive that. And Bill said, we're going to try it. And that project was called Fairfax Crossing. And it was the best-selling project in that immediate market area for 2 years and sold out very quickly. And it goes back to what I said. Hey,
the niche.
I bet there were a lot of people that walked in there and said, I don't like it. But for those that did and were excited by something different, nobody else was doing it. And then another, Roy Humphreys, who ran Shea Home for so long, was just a great mentor. And Roy had an amazing talent for product. He is a guy that really, saw the third dimension. And then as far as inspiration, I'm just inspired still today. I mean, when people say, why are you still working? It is really partly the people I'm working for. And that's, once again, the Shea family and the inspired leadership of Bert Selva and Peter Shea Jr.
All great.
Is just, to me, it would be hard to give it up.
They're a family for you.
Yeah, and then you backdrop that with John Shea Jr. and all the Sheas. I mean, it's just whatever the internal linkage is. I mean, I could not be more gifted with who I am working with and for. I feel very fortunate.
Well, my hunch is they feel very fortunate too. You know, it's interesting. I would tell you, just so you know, I mean, you're a mentor from a distance from me, just seeing all the presentations and all the work you've done. Certainly the resource from Design Lens, and just even all the involvement in the designs. I mean, I literally will track Shea Designs because of what comes out of the companies. Just so thoughtful and frankly pushing the envelope and doing something different. So with that, I would love to thank you, for everything, not only your impact on me, but the industry, and for being here today.
Thank you for joining us today. This is Mollie Carmichael with Howard Englander today. It was such a pleasure to join him, and I hope that you'll join us next time.